So just a little bit about myself. I'm a senior associate here at Tully Rinckey. I've been at the firm since 2019, a veteran of the United States Marine Corps. And my practice area is predominantly focused on military national security clearance adjudication. So today we're here because you may have some interest in what happened after you were separated from the military and what type of benefits you could potentially receive should you be reinstated. So just a brief overview of some of the things we're going to cover here today. First being who's eligible for reinstatement and what type of factors are considered. Second thing we're going to discuss is what that reinstatement process looks like. And then one of the third things we're going to discuss is the service obligations you'll incur if you decide that reinstatement is something you want to pursue, as well as some of the financial benefits you could receive if you elect to be reinstated into the military. So who is eligible for reinstatement? We have members who were voluntarily and involuntarily separated solely for vaccine refusal. Both are eligible for reinstatement. However, the benefits that the individual may receive are a little bit different. So to be, you may have a question of, what does it mean to be voluntarily separated? The military has defined this as you allowing your service obligations to lapse or refusing to re-enlist solely because of the COVID-19 vaccine mandate that was ordered at that time. For those who were involuntarily separated, that means there was no type of misconduct outside of simply refusing to receive the vaccine. If there was misconduct, it was typically, very minor and wouldn't normally result in separation of the member. So factors that are going to be considered for reinstatement. First and foremost, members still have to maintain or meet medical standards for appointment, enlistment, or induction. One of the other things they're obviously going to consider is what did the member's service record look like? Is there a history of NJP, insubordination, things like that? Was there any type of say drug abuse or any other factors that maybe would lead the service to come to the conclusion that reinstating that member may not be the best option. One of the other factors they're obviously considering is what was the basis for separation. Now, when the COVID-19 mandate was in effect, I did a lot of the religious accommodation requests, medical waiver requests. I saw a lot of what was happening to the service members. And there were times where a service member refusing to receive the vaccine kind of was a secondary ground for removal of the service member. And what I mean by that is there may have been, maybe a pattern of minor misconduct that the military was kind of on the fence about. Do we separate the service member over this misconduct, or do we retain them? And then once that vaccine mandate rolled out and the member refused, that kind of gave the military everything they needed to move forward and separate that service member. One of the other factors they're obviously considering is how did the member perform prior to separation? What did their evaluation reports look like? What did their fit reps look like? What were their pro and con marks? So those are all factors that are going to be considered by the military when the member is requesting reinstatement. So what does the reinstatement process look like? So if we're separated over vaccine refusal, whether it was involuntary separation or a voluntary separation, the DoD right now is conducting an outreach program. They are identifying any members who may have been separated voluntarily or involuntarily over COVID-19 vaccine refusal. Those outreach efforts are going to include mailing a physical letter to all individuals that have been affected. They'll follow that up with email correspondence if possible, and then a phone call from an individual who's solely dedicated to answering questions related to the reinstatement process. The reinstatement process is actually the same process you would use if you were out of military and attempting to correct your military records. So what that process looks like is submitting a request for reinstatement to your branch of services Board for Correction of Military or Naval Records. Each branch has one, with the Marine Corps and the Navy both falling under the Board for Correction of Naval Records. So in order to request reinstatement, you have to complete and submit a DD-149 application for the correction of military records. Now, a lot of times what we'll see in practice is that an individual will simply mail in, complete a DD-149, mail that into their respective branch, and kind of cross their fingers and hope for the best. That is typically not enough to result in the board granting relief. There's no requirement that the board grant relief, and if you can't give them a compelling argument on why relief is deserved, 9 times out of 10, they're going to deny that. They're not going to go about looking for evidence to support your request. They're not an investigative body. They're simply going to look at the records that you provide and make a decision based upon those records. So for, if the individual is looking to be reinstated, it really is in their best interest to do all the legwork up front, because the board's not going to do it, and make the decision very, very easy on the board. So for members who left voluntarily, this is a caveat, and it does not apply to members who left involuntarily, but members who left voluntarily will have to sign and attest that they left service or allowed their service to lapse rather than be vaccinated under the vaccine mandate. A couple more things about the reinstatement process. So typically the board would take about 18 months to issue a decision, and that is just based upon their workload. They receive thousands of applications each year. For the reinstatement process, the boards have actually been directed to expedite what would be a request for reinstatement. Once an application is filed, the board actually makes a tentative decision, which allows the military to go back in and perform a calculation for benefits. What's going to happen after that tentative decision is made is that the service member is going to receive a breakdown of what their expected financial benefits would be for reinstatement. Upon receiving that, the member actually has 60 days to look everything over and make a decision on whether or not they want to be reinstated. After that 60-day period, if no decision has been made, that's it. The board is not going to go ahead and correct your DD-214 to show honorable service if the one you got when you were separating over vaccine refusal was a general under honorable conditions. So it's kind of a take it or leave it scenario. The board will give you the information you need to make a fully informed decision, or their best estimate as far as your financial contributions could be back to you, and then that's it. Ball's in your court for the next 60 days. And one thing that is not up on the slides is this reinstatement program is only effective for a year from the date the memorandum was issued, which was 7 February 2025. So you have until 6 February 2026 to submit an application to the board. Now, as far as things regarding back pay and what would have happened to you had you not been involuntarily or voluntarily separated. For those who were voluntarily separated, you're not eligible for back pay. You won't receive credit for lost service or similar relief following reinstatement. Now that is a 180-degree flip for those who were involuntarily separated. For those of you that were involuntarily separated, you will be eligible for back pay if you're willing to accept a new 2-year service commitment. Like I said, you'll receive an estimate of back pay prior to entering that service commitment and have that 60-day window to respond. Now, as far as those benefits go, you're looking at potential basic pay, basic allowance for subsistence, basic allowance for housing based upon your last permanent duty station, cost of living adjustments if applicable, bonus payments that were recouped as a result of separation will likely be returned to you, and then bonus payments earned during that reinstatement period will be returned to you as well. Now, that reinstatement period is actually the separation date listed on your DD-214 to the date you return to service. So for some of you who may have been separated early on when this COVID-19 vaccine mandate came out, it could be a couple years worth of back pay for you. Now, so we already discussed the service obligations. You're not allowed to finish out your prior contract. So if you were separated and had 1.5 years left on your enlistment contract, you're not able to just finish out that 1.5 years and receive all your back pay. It does require a new 2-year service agreement, whether you were involuntarily or voluntarily separated. Now, one of the things about the financial benefits that everybody should be aware about is it's not going to really result in a windfall to any individual who's been reinstated. So wages earned from any job or self-employment during the reinstatement period are deducted or treated as an offset to the potential pay and allowances you would receive. One of the other things that is important to consider as far as the financial benefits or just the benefits in general go is this entire period that from the moment you were separated to the moment you may be reinstated is treated as if there was no break in service. So if a member was separated with, say, 12 years of active duty military service and 4 or 5 years lapsed by the time they were reinstated, that essentially puts you 3 years away from retirement, or retirement eligibility, I should say. One of the other things we want to, or you should be aware about, is that it's not just basic pay, allowance, and things like that you're entitled to. For those that were involuntarily separated, you actually get backdated health benefits as well. And the Department of Defense Health Agency and the DoD are actually working on being able to recompensate or reimburse people who were separated involuntarily and then incurred significant financial expenses related to health care coverage during their reinstatement period. So things that a member may be also eligible for is reinstatement of any health insurance premiums that were paid during that reinstatement period, i.e. the period between when you first left active duty or reserve service, military service, to when you are actually reinstated. And again, that could mean a couple years of insurance healthcare premiums being refunded. That could result in any co-pays being refunded, things like that. It's a little bit different for individuals who were not on active duty. For those that were in, say, the reserve component or the guard, what they do is they then deduct those TRICARE Reserve Select premiums from whatever back pay you would be entitled to as a result of health insurance premiums that you incurred while you were out of service. All right. So does anybody have any, it was a really brief rundown, but if anybody has any specific questions, please feel free to ask those questions.
So I want to thank everybody for joining today's webinar, and thank you again, Eric, for presenting. This presentation was recorded and a copy will be sent to all attendees later on. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you, Brady.